And if I could just call, I can see here that there don't appear to be more people coming to our chamber. Could I welcome everybody here this morning? This is a big decision of our council that we are facing this morning. Could I just remind everybody, including myself, to turn your cell phone off? And we also welcome the media here. They've been given permission, they sought permission, and they've been given permission. Can I welcome all of you that have turned up today to hear our debate and our decision-making process, and also those that are watching by live streaming. This will be of high interest. So before we begin, we're going to do this slightly differently this morning. I'm going to ask Kingi Biddle, our Pūkenga Matauronga Māori, to open our hui this morning.
Tupuki roto, tupuki waho, tupuki te whai au ki te ao māramati hei Māori ora. Te Arawa waka, te Arawa tangata, te Arawa ko hoki mai ki tēnei o ngā whare, ko tātou anu tēnei. Ko hoki mai ki tēnei wāhi wānanga-nanga, ki tēnei wāhi rū-nanga-nanga, ki te āta poi-poi, ki te āta matapaki, ki te kaupapa kei mua i te Arawa. E hara i te mea he mahi māmā tēnei. E hara i te mea he mahi māmā tēnā, ki ngā hunga kei a rātou te kōrero, ki ngā hunga kei a rātou te taumahaka. Nō reira ka uhia nei ngā kupu mihi ki runga ki a rātou. Kia tātou te Arawa waka ko tai mai, te Arawa waka ko pai mai tēnā koutou, ko te rā te kōrero, ko te whare whawhao, anō te whare whawhao, o te ao kapurangi, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Now, I really like that kōrero, te whare whawhao, o te ao kapurangi. In the time of Mokoia, te ao kapurangi had to use an adroit way of thinking and a magnanimous thought process to save our people. Ka ora ai te iwi, and today that same kaupapa is being laid upon our councillors today. It will be whai whakaro, it will be wānanga-nanga, it will be rūnanga-nanga. Ko te rā te kōrero, ko te kaia te rangatira he kōrero, ko te kaia te ariki he noho puku he whakarongo, ko te kai o te whanaunga, he aroha, he aroha, he aroha. I roto i tēnā tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Ka tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, me te kōrero, tukuna ngā kōrero kia rere, tukuna ngā moi ā, kia whai kiko ai, tēnā koutou, Councillor Kaifong, tēnā tātou katoa, kei
No, so thank you. Kia.
Kia ora koutou.
Could we stand, please?
Kia ia noi tātou. Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tau ai, te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, homi e, hui e, tae heki e.
Bye, Sandra. Ora. That is our karakia, and we're hearing it at every meeting, and councillors and board members all know and use the karakia, so thank you for that. I now call for apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Bentley. Do I have a move? I'll move, Councillor Bentley. Second, Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes, Your Worship, if you may. Your Worship, I just wonder if I could ask that that we suspend Standing Order number 21.5 that allows or requires us to speak only once. I think this is a significant issue today, and I would request that standing order be suspended for this meeting. And I'm happy to move if you would accept that.
Yes, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Yates. And that's absolutely appropriate for us so that we wide-ranging debate and discussion before we vote. And that's all those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Bring them up. Thank you. So that standing order, to translate for us all, means that usually we only speak once. So this gives us the opportunity to have good, robust debate, and then we will put the motion. Right, we move on, and I am going to move as one that the report recommendation, consideration of Māori wards 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 5 be taken as one. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. We'll receive the report first. So I move that we receive the report. Seconded Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. And I move that Council now, and I will read them. Yes, we're going to get... I want to signal that we're taking them as one. So I'm signalling that we're going to take points 2, 3, 4 and 5 as one. So I'll read them for those at home who haven't got the privilege of having the report. I'll call for a seconder in a minute. That Council accepts the recommendation of Te Tātou Te Arawa and approves the establishment of a Māori ward for the triennium 2022 election. That Council note a representation review with full public engagement will be conducted to determine the representation arrangements. That Council agree to a wider review of Council's governance framework, including the purpose, membership and powers of Council's committees and community boards, and a discussion with Te Arawa community about the possibility of strengthening co-governance. That Council directs staff to prepare a proposal on the scope and a proposed review process. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Donaldson. Now going to have Gina, you're going to present the report paper. Thank you, Gina.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, I mua I te wahaina, I mua I te pūrongo a Gina. One of the things I roto I te ao Māori, my job is the mātauranga Māori pukenga, and my role is to enable council and council arms to see what is it that Māori see. How do we see the world? And so that when decisions are made, there's full, those decisions are made not just with tangata kāinga, but also from tangata whenua in mind. When babies are born, their placenta is put into the ground. And so that whenever somebody, wherever they may move, wherever they may go to in the world, they know they have a place to belong. The placenta is called a whenua. And the whenua is also what we call the land. And this, I think, really paints the picture in terms of the relationship that Te Arawa and the descendants of Te Arawa have, because their placenta, their whenua is in this whenua. And the whenua of their tupuna is in this whenua. So the fact that we're here today discussing this kaupapa honours the whenua and the relationship that our people have. This is a really important kōrero for Rotorua and the kaupapa of tātou tātou. The whenua talks today, and you have an opportunity to contribute to that conversation. I roto I tērā āhuatanga o tātou. He kaupapa motu hake tēnei, he kaupapa rongo nui tēnei, he kaupapa Rotorua tēnei, he kaupapa Te Arawa tēnei. Tukuna ngā kōrero kia rere. Let the discussions flow. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Tēnā tātou, kei aku tini, kei aku rahi, tēnei aku mihi kia koutou katoa, o tira kia koe te manukura, tēnā koe e hautu ana I a tātou I tēnei rangi, ki ngā councillors katoa, tēnā tātou. I have a presentation which will step through in a bit of detail the report that I've prepared and that has been circulated to the elected members. I will go through it in some detail because I think it's important that not only our elected members have the opportunity to go through it, but also that those watching at home understand some of the considerations that have to be taken into account in making this decision. So this presentation will start by discussing background in terms of the evolution of Māori representation in Rotorua, the amendment to the Local Electoral Act, which occurred earlier this year, the representation review and what that is and what it means, and then a little bit of information about Māori wards. I will then move to the recommendation from Te Tatau o Te Arawa. I will also talk about the future of local government and the reforms that we're currently going through, and then speak to the 3 options that are outlined in my report, as well as the staff recommendation. I've started my presentation by reminding ourselves of the vision. This kōrero was prepared in consultation, wide consultation with the people of the Rotorua district to really express what it is that guides Council's thinking as we look towards 2030. I'll only read out the English part at this point. This is our home, we are its people. We're the heart of Te Arawa and a centre for Māori culture and expression. We're innovative and we share what we learn. We're driving opportunity, enterprise and diversity. We're supporting a legacy of sustainability for our environment. Rotorua is a place for everyone. Tātou, tātou, we together. Because I think that it's really important that as we navigate these decisions, we remember the reasons why we are here and the work that we are trying to achieve. The evolution of Māori representation, although there is a history prior to 1993, for most of us, the Te Arawa Standing Committee was a really important expression of Māori contribution to local government, and in particular to this council. And there were a number of rangatira over the years who were on the Standing Committee. However, over time, Te Arawa decided to come together to develop a new proposal. There was extensive consultation, and in the end result, on 26 May 2015, Council adopted the Te Arawa Partnership Model. And then later that year, Council signed the Te Arawa Partnership Agreement. One of the things in my written report was the statement that at the time that Te Tatau o Te Arawa was established, Māori wards were not considered because of 2 reasons. One, that they weren't accountable to Te Arawa directly, and also because of the poll provisions. After I'd prepared my report, I went back and read some of the documents from 2015. In fact, in October 2014, Council had made a decision not to establish a Māori ward. And why that's important is that under the Local Electoral Act, when you make those decisions, they are binding for 2 elections. So in fact, when Te Tatau was established, the Council did not have the power to create Māori wards at that time anyway. So even if there had been a desire to do it, it wasn't on the table. Having said that, I don't think there was a desire at that time, because the focus was really on the expression of mana whenua and the role that Te Arawa wanted to play as mana whenua in Council. Earlier this year, apologies for the typo, it should be 2002, there was an amendment made to the Local Electoral Act. It came into effect on the 2nd of March, and its main contents were to end the binding poll mechanism for Māori wards. Now, previously, if a council made the decision to create Māori wards, there was a binding poll, which the bill called an insurmountable obstacle for most councils, and you only needed a 5% effectively decision, and the decision could be overturned. That was unlike any other provision within the Local Electoral Act. So the establishment of general wards wasn't subject to that, only Māori wards, and that's why the Amendment Act was brought into being, was essentially to take away the injustice of the poll. It also created a transition period that ends today. So one of the questions that we have heard during the discussions in recent weeks is, can we defer the decision beyond today, and could we include the question of Māori wards in the representation review later this year? The answer to that is no. An ordinary decision to introduce Māori wards had to be made by the 25th of November last year. The transition period in the Amendment Act extends that timeframe through to today. After today, any decisions that are made will not be in effect for the next election. So turning now to what is a representation review. Every 6 years, Council is required to consult with the community around how representation in terms of the Council is to occur. And the proposal has to address the total number of Council members. If wards are created, the number, name and boundaries of each ward, and the number of community boards, their membership and their boundaries. So it has to happen at least every 6 years. We are in our 6th year since our last representation review, so by the 31st of August of this year, Council must approve a proposal for community consultation for the representation review in advance of next year's election. Once you've approved that proposal, the next step is public submissions and then a hearing. Council makes a decision which can be appealed to the Local Government Commission, and a final decision has effect for the next 2 elections, and that final decision is made around about April of next year, no later than. So, Māori wards. Excuse me. Currently, our electoral population is 77,300. Now, this is an estimate provided by the Local Government Commission based on the 2018 census as at 30 June 2020. So the technical process is that the Local Government Commission and Statistics New Zealand give us the number that we are to rely on. And essentially the number that we are to rely on is the general roll is approximately 55,600 people, which is 72% of the district, and the Māori roll is 21,700 people, approximately 28% of the district. So what that means is that 28% or thereabouts of elected members that come from wards would come from the Māori wards, and 72% from the general wards. Now, if we stayed at 10 elected members, that would be 3 and 7. You can have a different number of total elected members, and that's a question for the representation review. So all we need to know for today is that whatever that total number is, 28% will be drawn from the Māori wards and 72% from general. And everybody votes for the role of mayor, because the role of mayor is an at-large role, so everybody gets to vote for that position. I think it's really important to note that Māori wards and general wards are subject to the same population ratio rules. So there is no difference in the weighting of a person's vote, irrespective of which ward you sit in or which electoral role you sit on. Your vote has the same proportional effect. Turning now to the recommendation from our partnership board, Te Tatau. On 19 March, Te Arawa consultation began, and there were extensive opportunities to participate. There were a number of hui that were convened by Te Tatau, as well as social media, online surveys, and in addition, Te Tatau went and met with different Te Arawa groupings. So it wasn't just the hui that they called themselves, they also went to other people's hui to raise awareness and to seek feedback, and the detail of that is set out in their report. On the 11th of May, Te Tatau wrote to Council to recommend, 1, that Council establish Māori wards for the next election and retain Te Tatau o Te Arawa, and 2, that the representation review reflect the outcome of the establishment of Māori wards. And so that's what's the basis for the recommendation that I've put in the report. I'd also like to note that the report records strong views from Te Arawa that local government arrangements should reflect te te tiriti o Waitangi, and that this is a much broader discussion than Māori wards. And that's important because it's very consistent with the general direction in which local government is heading, and I will talk about that further in this report. In particular, the future of local government. We have seen massive shifts in terms of the statutory context that we're operating in. In the last term of Minister Mahuta's role as local government minister, the full wellbeings were reinstated. That has already had significant impact on our work programs and the things that elected members take into account when you're making decisions.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Can I just ask that you could explain what the four wellbeings are? There may be some people here that are not familiar with that. Thank you.
I wish I could quote the specific section, but I can't. But essentially what it's saying is that Council, in making its decision, has a responsibility in respect of the social, cultural, economic and environmental wellbeing of the district. And previously that was somewhat unclear, and there had been for several years a gradual reduction of the role of local government, particularly around social wellbeing. But the reinstatement of those four wellbeings makes it clear that your role is more than just infrastructure and roads and footpaths. You have a role in the wellbeing of people and communities. So that legislative change has already happened. We are currently in the process of the repeal and replacement of the Resource Management Act, which again will fundamentally change the role that local government has. We are at the very beginning of significant reform of the way in which three waters are managed. So, whānau, three waters is essentially fresh drinking water, wastewater and stormwater. And those are the three waters that District Council has to manage. We're currently in the midst of a major reform that is looking at potentially removing those responsibilities from local government and putting them into separate entities. That process hasn't been decided yet, but it's still working its way through the system. Again, if that reform is completed in the way that we're expecting it to, it will have significant impact on the work program of this council. And then finally, Minister Mahuta has recently announced a review panel to be chaired by Jim Palmer into the future of local government. And I'm going to pull up the terms of reference. These terms of reference are important because it indicates the shift in which the Minister is seeking to create, I guess, structural change for councils. She is asking for recommendations on, firstly, a resilient and sustainable local government system fit for purpose and able to adapt to future needs. She is looking for a system that inspires public trust and confidence. She is looking for a system that creates effective partnerships between mana whenua, central and local government to better provide for the four wellbeings. This is critical. She is not simply saying between mana whenua and central government or mana whenua and local government, but the realisation that there is a three-way relationship in delivering social, environmental, cultural and economic wellbeing that requires mana whenua, central government and local government to be working together. And finally, and interestingly, that the treaty partnership and the principles of the treaty are being given a separate focus within these terms of reference. It's not being lumped into partnership between mana whenua, central and local government. So she's looking at it from a number of different approaches, and that is that local government should actively embody the treaty partnership through the role and representation of iwi, Māori in local government, and seeks to uphold te tiriti and its principles through its functions and processes. I've had a few questions about what does te tiriti actually say. I think it's really important to understand that there are two accepted texts, a Māori language text and an English text. There are some variations between the two that are really important. And so I'll touch on those. But really what's most important is what it means for us as council. So Article 1 is really about the rights of the Crown. It is what establishes the right of the Crown to govern. Now, the word used in the English text is sovereignty. The word used in the Māori language text is kāwanatanga, which is a transliteration of governorship. Now, being a governor and being a sovereign are actually two very different concepts. And so that's why there is so much debate and discussion about what does it mean. What is important for you is that as an expression of the Crown's government, you have a requirement to provide for fair and effective representation under the Local Electoral Act. That is a statutory requirement. Fair and effective representation is about diverse voices, democracy, and ensuring that the decisions you make are good for the entire community. Māori wards are an expression of the Article 1 right of government. They are about making sure that you have provided fair and effective representation. They're not an Article 2 right, which is what I'll be talking about next. So this is about diverse democratic voices. Article 2 is about the rights of Māori, and again, significant differences in the two texts. In the Māori text, it talks about tino rangatiratanga, which roughly translates as the most highest authority there is, versus possession. Wildly different meanings. Again, what is important is that Article 2 is about the right of Māori to be self-determining, to define for themselves how they want to be, how they want to express their identity, how they want to hold on to their identity and their taonga in the broader sense of what taonga means. So how I have talked about it in the report is that the establishment of Te Tatau o Te Arawa and the Te Arawa partnership was an expression by Te Arawa of its desires and how it wished to establish and engage with Council. Because it was designed and led by Te Arawa as an expression of their tino rangatiratanga and how they wish to engage. The key point here is that Māori wards and Te Tatau o Te Arawa serve very different purposes. One is about democracy and representation, and the other, Te Tatau, is about the expression of Te Arawa aspirations and the expression of Te Arawa identity, I guess. Now, one thing that I often hear is, but local government don't have treaty responsibilities because technically councils are not the Crown. I don't really need to answer that question because legislation imposes particular obligations on councils. In particular, the Local Government Act requires council to have processes for Māori to contribute to local government decision making. So the Act specifically requires Māori as a distinct community to be involved and to have opportunities to contribute. In addition, of course, treaty settlement legislation also creates specific rights, and I've listed some of the settlements relevant to our rohe. And again, harking back to the requirements of the current reforms, actively embody the Treaty of Partnership. So while the technical definition of the Crown doesn't include local councils, there are statutory obligations, and it is clear that the Minister is thinking about how councils should move to better reflect the principles of the treaty. Actively embody, so not just give lip service to, not just take into account, but actively embody. It requires steps and actions to be taken. So, the future of local government. It is clear that we are facing complex community issues that require partnership. We have known this in this district for many years, and I would say that the recent task force between iwi, central government and council in regards to emergency housing is a really good example of those three groups coming together to try to tackle difficult issues. No one of those groups can do it by themselves, and our collective efforts are always going to be more impactful for this district than doing it by ourselves. So Māori wards and the representation review are important because of our reputation and our relationships with Te Arawa. However, it doesn't go far enough. It does not address the current reform process, key aspects of the existing governance framework, including our committees and their delegations, the role of central government and iwi, and it doesn't consider the broader questions of co-governance. So, the options. You have three options. The first is to decline to establish Māori wards. And I've laid out in my report what I consider to be the likely consequences of such a decision in terms of the significant impact on our reputation and our credibility in the eyes of Te Arawa. And in my view, it would significantly impair the Te Arawa partnership with immediate and potentially irreparable damage to our work program and our ability to get things done. Option 2, to establish Māori wards. I have again laid out some of the risks in regards to option 2, primarily that it may attract controversy and anti-Māori sentiment, and that was a feature of the decision-making at the time of Te Tatau o Te Arawa. We did see a significant rise in those kinds of commentary. I do think, though, and I've laid this out in my report, that times have changed since then. At that time, there was significant fear, I think, about the unknown. But what we have seen since then is a growing appreciation for the contribution that Te Tatau makes and the better decisions that we're able to make when there are more diverse voices at the table. I think it's also relevant to look at what's happening around the country. As of this morning, there are 28 councils that have taken advantage of the change in legislation and have decided to establish Māori wards. 28 councils, that is a significant shift. And what we have seen is that the controversy is not coming when the decision is made to establish Māori wards. The controversy is coming when Māori wards are declined. I think that is relevant. Option 3 is, yes, to establish Māori wards, but also to be willing to tackle the broader questions of our governance arrangements and to begin a review. And I've laid out the basis of that. Essentially, option 2 maintains our reputation and our credibility, but it doesn't prepare us for the reforms. Option 3 would prepare you for the reform process because it would enable you to be more informed and to have a clear position when the review panel comes and asks what your views are on the future of local government. Now, staff are not suggesting that you make a decision today on whether to implement a co-governance regime. We are simply saying that it is timely to direct staff to come back to you with a process and a scope to begin those discussions. So we're simply opening the door to that conversation in the context of Māori wards. Right. And so I started this presentation by talking about the vision. I'd like to take us now back to the goals that sit underneath that vision. Papa whakatipu, outstanding places to play. Wāhi pūmanawa, vibrant city heart. Whakawhanake Pākihi, business innovation and prosperity. Kāinga noho, kāinga haumaru, homes that match needs. He hāpuri pūmanawa, a resilient community. He huarahi hou, employment choices. And te akina tō taiao, enhanced environment. I have to say, I think that in the absence of a strong Te Arawa partnership, I cannot see how we can realistically make changes in respect to the goals. So, the recommendation, and our Mayor has already read that out or put that up, but just to remind ourselves, that is the recommendation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Gina, and I want to congratulate you for a very comprehensive report that has helped us as elected members and not guided us, but informed us about our responsibilities. So we'll open now for questions. Councillor O'Kawatate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Gina. It is true that, well, I think earlier this year, I don't think anyone sitting in this chamber today would have thought that we would be having to grapple with this. But we have seen in the last 2 years, actually even longer than that, what has happened. We saw our colleague from New Plymouth City Council, Andrew Judd, get turned down.
It is a question time.
Yes, it is, but I'm just trying to put it in context because this is why we're here today. Had it not been for Minister Mahuta deciding to overturn that 5% binding poll, 28 councillors in the last 6 weeks have got over the line. And that's why it's important that we actually hear this. So I'm pleased about that. But you also never mentioned about the vision, Te Arawa's vision. This is the Te Arawa vision that is actually dependent on this council making the correct decisions in the future. And do we just let it lie on the table from time to time when it doesn't suit anybody? So can I just ask, seeing the Mayor is pushing me to put my question, can I just ask that, you didn't mention the aspirations of Te Arawa, but this is critical too, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
A very good question. And when we debate, I'm sure we were going to mention it. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Worship. My question's for the Chief Executive, and I agree with you, Your Worship. It's an excellent, very elegant report. The question is around the Te Tino Aromatawai assessment of significance, and I've read the discussion there. Just asking the Chief Executive, in his view, has the engagement undertaken by Te Tātou fulfilled Council's obligations for consultation on this significant matter?
Yeah, through the Chair. Look, I think as Gina has succinctly answered previously, the answer is yes. Arguably, I think you would see that the introduction of Māori wards, the most affected group is Te Arawa. And when it is Te Tātou o Te Arawa based on consultation with Te Arawa that's proposing this introduction, it would be hard to argue that those consultation requirements hadn't actually been met. Of course, it's also equally arguable that it's important to undertake consultation with the broader community, and that's precisely what will be undertaken with respect to broader representation matters during the review process.
Thank you for that answer, and Your Worship. I only asked that question because I see Napier Council deferred this decision for wider consultation before they took a decision. So I just wanted to be clear on that, and the buck stops with the Chief Executive to make sure it's done right. So thank you.
And before I take another question, would you like those standing at the back? There are some seats in the gallery. Do come. Oh, you're right. Right. Question was Councillor Maxwell and then Councillor Yates.
Kia ora. Thank you, Gina, for an excellent report. Excellent. The question I have is around number 4. Can you just give us briefly some of the co-governance arrangements that our council has already?
Council is party to a number of different co-governance and co-management arrangements, primarily through settlement legislation. So, for example, we have a joint management agreement with Rotorua and also with the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust. That is a binding JMA. It provides specific powers around iwi rights of approval on district plan changes before they're provided for example. And it requires, they have powers of approval and veto under those JMAs. Another example of co-governance that is long-standing within this district is the Te Arawa Lakes Strategy Group, which is a co-governance model between Te Arawa Central Government, Te Arawa Regional Council and Rotorua Lakes Council, with attendance from the Ministry for the Environment on behalf of the Crown. So co-governance I think some people assume that it means 50% of seats are set aside for Māori. In fact, within this district and nationally, the way in which co-governance is expressed depends on the circumstances of the particular taonga, the particular communities. What co-governance is really about is respecting the role and the different responsibilities of council, of central government and of iwi, and providing a forum in which they can meet as equals and work towards consensus decision making. Certainly not, I'm not trying to propose what that would look like today, but simply to say that the concept of co-governance and whether it might be strengthened in this district, with what the possibilities of what that might look like, those are questions for a further discussion, and I'm simply seeking the elected members' views on whether that's a discussion worth having, so that we might come back to you with a proposal at a later date.
Gates.
Kia ora and thank you, through you, Madam Chair. O tira kia koe, Gina, koutou ko tō ohu I whakarite ai I wene o ngā kōrero hei hāpai nei tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. Whilst we've had presentation historically in our council, and today I sit with 3 other of our tarawa whānau here at the table, can you please, I want a little bit of confidence here that historically we've always managed to have good representation. Special acknowledgement to Uncle Trev, who has been the highest polling and even Deputy Mayor for a number of decades here in Rotorua. Was this taken into consideration when considering the introduction of Māori wards and whether or not it would strengthen our base or potentially be of detriment to our future moving forward?
It was certainly a feature of the discussion during the Te Arawa hui. Those matters of I guess, strategy and consequence were discussed by Te Arawa prior to their making the recommendation. In terms of my report as an officer, I'm not commenting on the outcome of a future election because no one ever knows, and it's certainly not for me to make those kinds of predictions or be involved in that. And so you'll see that my advice is really about the consequences for our reputation as an organisation. And that's really whether a decision, yes, no, maybe, what impact would that have in terms of your existing program of work? That's what my advice is focused on. But I can say that Te Arawa did consider those issues before they made their recommendation to you.
Capsule.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you, and this may be a governance question for our governance manager, but I do note in the report that it mentions in the background Māori wards do not adequately provide for accountability to mana whenua, and so my question is, who is able to stand for a Māori ward? And then my second, actually maybe if you answer that one first.
Yes, so any person can stand in a Māori ward who is on the electoral roll, whether that be on the general roll or the Māori roll. Similarly, any person who's on the roll can stand in the general wards as well. So what that means is, if you're on the general roll, you can stand in the Māori seats, and if you're on the Māori roll, you can stand in the general seats. What matters is your eligibility to stand. In terms of whether you need to be Te Arawa, no you don't. And my observation of the discussion amongst Te Arawa when they considered that issue in the hui was a decision that, notwithstanding the fact that you don't need to be Te Arawa to stand in the Māori seats, you don't even need to be Māori, they still supported the establishment of Māori wards. Yeah.
Thank you. And then my second question is, it's my understanding that Māori wards are for electoral purposes only, e.g. to get them elected, but once elected, a councillor in the Māori ward swears an oath that is exactly the same as the councillors in the general ward, that they will act in the best interest of the district as a whole. So am I correct in believing that the Māori ward councillors are expected to still support the issues at general and are not there to only support the issues of Māori?
When wards are established, whether those are Māori wards or general wards, all of the elected members in all of those different types of wards are there for the best interests of the district as a whole. And in fact, when you walk into the room today, you'll see, I think it's on the left-hand side, the oath that everybody swears, which is about the representation of the district as a whole.
And Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Worship. This sort of follows on from the question from Councillor Tapsell. So in your report there, you have a statement that says that the Te Arawa Partnership and Māori wards serve different purposes. So are you saying that if it's a Māori ward representation, then that is to represent Māori as a whole, regardless of whether they are mana whenua, and that for mana whenua to have more consultation or to have more of a role in being represented, then that needs to be via the Te Tātou partnership model? I'm just trying to get an understanding of
that's correct.
Difference in the...
Yes, that's right. Although I would also say that notwithstanding the difference, Te Arawa have said they support the establishment of Māori wards. But yes, that's correct. Māori wards are about Māori generally in the district, whatever their iwi. And Te Tātou is primarily about the voice of mana whenua.
Just one further question, just around the electoral roll, because obviously that's going to have a significant impact for voters. So what sort of communication has been given in terms of the time frame? Because I understand it's quite tight. So if voters haven't decided which role they want to be on, they've only got a very limited opportunity now to switch roles?
You cannot switch role. There is
no opportunity?
There's no opportunity until after the next general election of central government, which is 2 years from now. So those of us who are on the Māori roll or those of us who are on the general roll, we will stay on that. Now, we can change districts, so I might move to Taupō or Auckland or wherever, but I can't change role.
Madam Chair, can I just say, I believe it's every 5 years Māori can.
Thank you.
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the Chair, thank you, Gina. Thank you, Kingi. And my respects to all the fellow people that are here today to support this hui. My understanding, before I get to my question, is my understanding of any consultations with Te Arawa lies the heart of the vision. And so if we are here today to think whether the Te Arawa vision of 2050 is not going to be understood, I believe that's what we're being told today, is that this is what Te Arawa want, and there lies the heart and the underbelly of the whole reason why we need to engage with Te Arawa. My question is, what's in front of us in regards to the legislation today? Are we here to establish Māori wards or co-governance or possible Te Arawa engagement?
The decision is primarily Māori wards. In the context, though, of also noting to you that there is a need to have a broader conversation to prepare you for the future of government, future of local government review. And so rather than coming to you sort of next month after you've made this decision, it was thought that really you should be making this decision in the context of those broader decisions. Now, option two is that option one is decline, option two is approve the establishment of a Māori ward, and you could stop there, but it's my recommendation that you both approve a Māori ward and also direct staff to start thinking about the broader questions as well. I didn't want to come back in a month and sort of relitigate similar issues.
Councillor McPherson.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kingi and Gina. Very helpful exposition. I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of some wonderful people, and I'm sorry that Sir Toby's not here. Just popped out, has he? Oh, well. I acknowledge your presence and your concern about the issues being discussed today. My preliminary question is just a simple one. That is, I'd like a definition, please, a legal definition of the authority of the partnership. The reason for this question is that the advice from Te Tata o Te Arawa is dependent on that standing, that legal authority. Thank you.
A point of order, Madam Chair. That standing of the partnership was determined quite some time ago, and I don't believe it's relevant to this discussion today.
I uphold your objection. We voted for Te Tata o Te Arawa as our partnership. It is wrong to ask for the legal definition of the partnership. I don't accept your question, unless you wish to answer it. Gina?
For my sins, I'm known for having opinions. The Te Arawa Partnership Agreement has a provision in there which sets out that it can only be disestablished by mutual consent. So, in the absence of a decision a mutual decision to disestablish it, it remains in force.
That's not a legal definition at all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If my memory serves me correct, Gina, the representational review, that's about a 6 weeks consultation process, and that should be undertaken, within the next 2 to 3 months? Just not quite, I need to get a handle on that. Thank you.
Through you, I'll answer that one. So the representation review, depending on what the outcome of today, will shape what that representation review will look like. We then need to go into a process whereby the 31st of August, a proposal on a representation model is brought back here to Council. That is then approved by the Council to go out and consult on that proposal. And that has to be out for a minimum of a month. In that time, submissions are sought. And on it closing, when the Council receives those submissions, and this is one of those processes where hearings are also run, at the end of that process, the Council will make a decision which is then lodged with the Local Government Commission. There is also the potential for an appeal process in that, so those people who chose to submit, if they then feel they want to, they can appeal that final decision. And then just jumping back a whole process, before a proposal is brought to Council, there will be what we call a pre-engagement phase. So there will be work done with the community around options and what a representation model could look like for the district.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wanting to assure Te Arawa that there will be an opportunity through that review process for their voices to be heard again. Thank you.
Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question has actually just been asked, but my second question, tēnā korua. Gina, are you able to explain a bit around the context of the Fenton Agreement in relation to the decision that we're making?
Can I just jump in for a second?
Yes.
It's awesome. Thank you very much there, Councillor Wang, for that Fenton's agreement. But we've just over the last year or so, Fenton was an okay man, but we're now moving to the township, the Rotorua Township Agreement, which is more illustrative of the intentions of the agreement. So I think it's the Rotorua Township Agreement you've been asking about?
I'll change the wording then.
Did you want to ask the question again, maybe?
Agreement.
You know.
Look, it's a very difficult question to answer when Ben Manley's sitting in the back row there. Yeah. The Rotorua Township was established by Te Arawa, by Ngāti Whakaue in particular, and the other iwi who are members of the Rotorua Township Agreement. And essentially land was gifted and set aside for the establishment of the township. And at the time that it was created, there was provision for an organisation like a council, which was made up of, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, 2 non-Māori and 1 Māori. So, ironically, very similar to the proportion that we're discussing today, which is around about a third. Over time, though, the township agreement was not upheld, and it is subject to treaty claims as a result. Does that answer the question?
Sorry, Councillor Yates, did you have a question? No? Are there any further questions? And then we'll get to discussion. Right, there appear to... Thank you for that, Gina and Kingi.
Nō reira tēnā kia koutou katoa. He kaupapa nui tēnei ka tika me whakakapi tēnei āhuatanga I roto I a tikanga me kawa nō reira koe nei te mahi te wero kei mua I a koutou I tēnei wā. Ngā kōrero kua wahaina, kua whāriki hia, whāngai hia, ki o koutou hinengaro, ki o koutou whakaro, kia puta he kaupapa, hei aha, hei painga mo te ao katoa. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Just kia ora. Right, we open now and we have voted. To take the motion as one, but as the mover of the motion, I want to open the debate. And I want to open the debate by reminding all of us as councillors that whatever decision we make today, it's on behalf of our wider community. And it's going to have significance for many years to come. I want to acknowledge Te Taru and the board of Te Te Arawa for being here, Tā Toby, Kaumātua and Queer who are here today, and all listening and support today. This feels very, very different from the environment of 6 years ago. So those of us that are sitting around the table today know that we have made a difference over the last 6 years, and hopefully with whatever decision we make today will make a difference for the future. But the future of politics, as we've learned, is always an iterative, a building process, and it always is. So we've learned from the success of the past as we review our options today. And on reflection, Gina, thank you for that overview. It took me back to the signing very much on the 26th of May. And for me personally, that was the day that I lost my husband also, who sat there and influenced me very strongly about our belief system and our value system that I brought as the mayor when we established Te Te Arawa. And that gives me strength now. So what I want to say is that then Te Tato didn't seek to establish wards. We knew the controversy. We knew what it would bring out in our wider community. And Te Tato understood that to begin to establish a partnership board was the greatest taki that we could go on that journey with the tools that we had. We also knew, and I couldn't believe that Te Tato in the debates then, or we in our debates, were informed by our advisory committee that recommendatory decisions of committees in which Te Tato sat were probably about as far as we could go. But the important debate was to get a partnership model, kei te pai. We accepted that, and we would have needed to review that in this term, I believe, of this council anyway. But we've got to congratulate ourselves, Rotorua, together, about what we've achieved in a very short time frame. And it's been recognised nationally, and we're in a very different position to those other 28 councils who didn't have a board. We've got a partnership board. And so we're considering a slightly different approach today, which shows the depth and the strength of our journey. And I also want to mention too the Te Arawa vision that Te Tato brought to the table. So not only have we started to work out what governance together looks like, but we have got a vision given to us by Te Tato o Te Arawa. And when we put that with our Vision 2050, and I always remember that whakatauki that we say now, and you opened our hui with Gina, that was actually written for us by Wena Harawira, and it stood the test of time since 2013. It's still what we are today, and I'm glad that you used that to set the scene for today. So we've done so much, but we have brought change also to the way we think and the way we're challenged at council committees by those of Te Tato. And we've seen challenges outside of decisions of council that are made on many of our advisory groups with our cultural impact assessment committees and our partnership for funding to the Crown, and you mentioned the Crown. The Crown has always looked at anything that we put forward for funding and said, where is Te Arawa? Are they walking beside council when we're putting forward these funding decisions? And we could say, yes, they're there. And that's given the strength to the pūtea that's come to our place to make our people even stronger. I want to also mihi to those councillors, and you brought it up in question time, Councillor Yates, those councillors that were there at the time, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Tapsell, Councillor Rokawa Tate, how strong you were. And this was a big decision. I want to also, Dave Donaldson, you were strong, you were unswerving, actually, beside us in your values and your principles and your understanding about inclusion and how could we broaden this. But I do understand, since we got our workshop presented to us, the concern that those who were elected at large, our representatives elected at large, trying to make the right decision for us today with what we've got before us today. I am delighted to see the rolling support around the country for Māori wards. Its time had come. And so that is an endorsement of the Amendment Act that was introduced in 2021. It takes away that absurd barrier of a community poll. I recognise and thank you for our report. Our report helped us enormously. I've read it and reread it and reread it, and that's what we ought to do. We've also referenced people that we take counsel from about how we're going to make a decision today. Thank you for giving the overview on te tiriti and the obligations of governance. And we're now much clearer, and as a community we've got to be much clearer about what we're voting for here, because certainly as we go forward, Article 2, looking at rangatiratanga and what might it look like in the future, is now one of the most interesting challenges that we as a community have got to face. So this led to a broader discussion also in our recommendations, especially recommendation 3 and 4. Take it out to the public. Be confident, take this out to the public. We will make a decision, we'll take it out, and our public understanding, because of the way that we've worked together and endeavoured to make the partnership work, is so much stronger. Just the feeling in this space is so much deeper than it was 6 years ago. So we're all learning on this journey. We're also learning, as you mentioned, Gina, about how do we manage these emerging challenges for us. Our emergency housing challenge here showed us that when we get Te Arawa with the Crown, with Council, we are so much stronger about getting the attention of those that can help us with our challenges. And we must be strong about how we face the Three Waters decision, and also how we're going to face the big discussion around what's local government all about. And today's decision certainly shapes our input, which people will look at nationally. What's Rotorua saying about the future of local government? what are they really saying about partnership? So I support option 3. It's absolutely, in my view, the way to go, and it's carried in this recommendation that we're voting on today. I don't feel anything like I felt at the table 6 years ago. But we do have to bring the wider community with us. We do, as an education, need to keep holding our lectures here on our Te Arawa lectures. We need, as councillors, to go out and also talk to our community about the lessons we've learned on our journey since 2016, and the richness also of having the Lakes and the Rural Board with us. We are the deeper for having better representation. So I heard Te Tātou Te Arawa. It was quite challenging, actually, but it was clear and it was emphatic. And it is now time later, I believe, if we accept these recommendations as one, to go out to a community and allow them to have their say. So, in conclusion, if we make the right decision today, I believe all of us as individuals are showing leadership, and the sky didn't fall in when Te Tātou Te Arawa began their journey of sitting with us at Council, and it won't fall in when we go forward with a decision to make on Māori wards. We all need to show leadership on this issue, and I would love us to have unanimous support for recommendation 3 and the resolution as it's put. So, who else would like to speak? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, reflecting on some of the cafe challenges that I confronted in 2015 when we were considering the establishment of Te Tātou Te Arawa, I believe there are 3 reasons to support the recommendations up there. The first is the treaty obligations. The second is local government Act provisions, both, as Gina has outlined, somewhat open to interpretation. And the third one is simply it's good business. It's good business to have effective partnerships. The Te Arawa consultation and feedback guaranteed, it did not guarantee seats at this decision-making table back in 2015. Partnerships can only exist in an atmosphere of mutual trust, and in some cases I believe that trust is somewhat tenuous, and that was highlighted in a protocol hui yesterday around a particular infrastructure discussion. A key driver for me in supporting the Te Arawa partnership was the number of signals from the Environment Court that demonstrated a lack of mutual understanding and trust and respect related to some of those key infrastructure projects going back in our history. We've worked hard as a council to garner a level of trust on a number of those projects, and I agree with your assessment, Gina. They would grind to a halt if we didn't support the establishment of Māori wards. So from that perspective, it's plain good business. For Rotorua to thrive, for this council to navigate the 3 waters, which are looking a bit choppy in my view, and the other reforms confronting local government, our social and environmental issues need to be addressed not kanoti te kanohi, as we have done in the past, but as a kaumātua signalled to me yesterday, we need to be walking shoulder to shoulder. So we need to be walking shoulder to shoulder with tangata whenua on those issues. A number of our key consents are lodged with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. It's not lost on me that that's an elected body that introduced Māori constituent seats 2 decades ago, and they've operated fine. The poll handbrake has been released, and in my view, it is time for that te pokohiwi ki te pokohiwi journey to begin. So, shoulder to shoulder, I'll be voting to support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Rotorua.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't prepare any written statement, but I do want to speak to this. And, you know, like so many councillors, we've got colleagues, councillor colleagues all around the country. And I have felt for them over the last few years when they've tried to get at least one seat at the council table. And they were turned down constantly by 5% of their community voting it down. Let there be no mistake, without Māori wards here in Rotorua, the same could happen to us. The same could happen to us. There are 4 of Te Arawa descent sitting at this table. We go each 3 years, we go to be elected by our community at large. That could turn at any time. That could turn at any time. And there is resistance in this community. I know, Your Worship, what you say, that it's not as it was 5 years ago. The outright dislike and hatred that many of us met when we tried to get Te Tātou or Te Arawa established. It isn't like that, but it is still there in our community. It is definitely still there. And this morning I spoke to Lady Moxham. They got the Waikato Council this week over the line. They have received death threats. So I'm just saying to you, in every community there is resistance when Māori say we would like to sit at the table, we would like to share decision making with you, there will always be resistance. And that's the reality. Some might say, well, you know, we go out there in Te Arawa, some of us go out there, we put our names alongside of everybody else and we get elected. And we do get elected. And I stand alongside anybody else because I'm as good as anybody else. In most instances, I think I'm far better. And that is not a whakahihi statement, it's just the fact. It's just a fact. We bring life experience, work experience that is actually vitally needed around this table. And we're all a product of our upbringing. And I sit, even today, at the table, and in years ago, when it was Trevor and dear Maureen, it was overt prejudice, discrimination, and racism that they encountered when they were trying to make the decisions for the best of our community. It is here at our table, even today. It's covert, but it's still discrimination, it's still prejudice, and it's still racism. And so we have to ensure that Te Arawa will have a place. There will be Māori wards, and hence this voting today. So I'm really pleased that I'm going to be supporting that, and I would urge councillors to do the same. Our treaty settlements have changed the landscape. The future development in Rotorua and our district will come off the backs of our treaty settlement. But we're not exclusive, we are inclusive. We will share our tribal assets and the development of those assets with everyone who lives within our tribal rohe. And we do that knowing that there is a place for everyone. Always has been. Always has been. We have a big heart and we want to share our assets with everybody who lives here, and we're pleased to do so. But we want to say on how those assets are going to be developed with the support of Council. I hold up the 2050 Aspirations of Te Arawa. Without somebody sitting at this table who has your aspirations at heart, it could be voted down. The three waters, as you mentioned, Your Worship, are so intrinsic to the future of Te Arawa, and we must have a Te Arawa perspective. We must have a Māori voice at the table. It's so very, very important. Everything that we have ever done, whether it's our radio station, our kura kaupapa, our kohanga reo, they've been hard won. Nothing was ever given to us. Nothing was ever given to us. We've had to get our tribal elders to come and to support us and to hold the line, be in the front of the line so often when we have wanted to advance our interests. And so I really feel that I know there is some anxiety. There's some anxiety by Māori. There's some anxiety by Te Arawa, some iwi. They're really anxious about this. How will this go over with our Pākehā whanaunga and relations in Te Arawa? Well, this is our time. This is definitely our time. But what we want is we want the best for everyone. Rotorua and our district is a place for everyone. But we cannot, in the future, go forward without ensuring that we will have our place, rightful place here at this table. It could go at any time, and we must prevent that. We make mokapuna decisions here. That's what we make. We're not here for the short term. We're not going away. These are our assets, it's our time. And so I want to urge my fellow councillors to vote accordingly today. Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if I have understood today that there could be 3 Māori seats and 7 general seats. Now, if I look at a mitigating action, the general public could say, the Māori are going to be represented in the Māori seat. They will have 3 seats. While it will be debated where the others will vote, what if there is a backlash and people say, we will vote in the 7 seats for non-Māori? I'm not saying it's possible that it's going to happen, but there's a scenario that it could happen. They said that Māori is going to be well represented there, and there might be a co-governance partnership model that will have another 2 at the table. So why don't we vote non-Māori in the other 7 seats to see that there is fair representation? This is a scenario. Now, while I look at that scenario, and I know what option that I have, because I have consulted, and Gina, if you can recall, in December, I came up to you and I said, I want to talk about Māori wards, and I believe I would like to see Māori wards. At that time, there was nothing else around it, but you told me that day that the partnership model is working, and that at a future stage, if there is something, you will let me know. But I was interested, because just prior to that, Reynald and I had gone to the Te Tato board, and we spoke about other aspirations. We spoke about the 2050 aspirations, and we understood a lot of that thing. But in my heart, I believed that if there was a general election, and I believe that Māori have been well represented, currently there is 4, and then there's the partnership, I believe that a Māori ward would represent the core values of what they believe. We didn't understand what model it might come up with, whether it could be any Māori, anybody with any amount of 10% Māori could stand for that, or could be an All Black. I didn't understand that. So that's where I wanted the clarity around it. But today also, yesterday, the newspaper called me about racism in New Zealand, to understand what do we feel like if there's racism. And I said to them, just because one idiot walks into my shop and says to me, oh, all you Indians need to go back to India. Hey, I understand, and I tell my peers that it's just one idiot who is high on drugs and does not represent the rest of New Zealand. But unfortunately, he says Indians because that's all of us in the corners of all the dairies, only Indians. So what's he going to say? Hey, some of you Indians need to go back to India. No. I hate it when a race card is played, because in New Zealand, everybody is fair. And that's why we have migrated to New Zealand, because this is a good way of life. You will be driving around the road, there will be jada bars, there will be safety signs, there will be speed limits. It's like in life as well. Somebody will throw you. Some of the Indians are the worst racist people in the world. And I say we should not play racial cards when it comes to making a decision today. I have made my decision based on research, based on my understanding, and that's what I will be delivering today.
That's what we expect all of us to do. Who else would like to speak? Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This should have been an easy decision, but for me it's been quite a difficult decision. So first off, I'd like to thank my colleagues for sharing their thoughts and for sharing their thoughts with me, for Te Tātou, in particular Jude and Te Taru, for the work that you've done in relation to the wider iwi consultation. I haven't shared with anyone what my thoughts were in the last couple of days when I've been kind of playing devil's advocate and trying to get a bit more information. I think it's probably unfortunate that this issue has become a lot more complex than it might have been because of the compressed time frame, the lack of opportunity for consultation not only with iwi but the wider community, and because we're looking at Māori representation or Te Arawa representation in isolation of a wider review of what the makeup of council may look like. I fear that there are misunderstandings and miscommunication, and there are some fears within the community from people that I've spoken to, and perhaps that comes about because of the lack of understanding around the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi and also what is thought that co-governance means. And so I think that it's been great today that, Gina, you've been able to have an explanation around those two principles. I've only sat at this table for a very short time, and so my experience of the Mana Whenua partnership is only with the relationship that I've had with the Te Tātou o Te Arawa partnership. From what I've observed and in practice, it seems to work well. But I think there is an opportunity for us to review that structure for both parties. Is there some improvement that can be made? And what can we do to actually strengthen that relationship going forward? I know that the next step will be to have a wider representation review with the whole of the Rotorua community, and I would welcome the opportunity to be actively involved in that discussion. The community then as a whole will get the opportunity to air their views. They will have the opportunity to look at the makeup of the whole of council, whether it be 7-3 or some other iteration. So without that other general wider consultation that we would normally have when we come to make a council decision, the decision that I make today is mine alone. And I'd like to thank my colleagues for the respect that they have shown, and I know that they will show regardless of the opinions that are going to be expressed today and how we all vote on this issue. I've looked at the material that's been provided. There is a clear obligation under legislation to increase Māori participation in decision making. There is a need to ensure that Māori voices are heard at this table, and whether it be by councillors sitting in Māori wards or elected into general wards. There is a need to continue to strengthen that relationship with iwi that's already been started. I know that we have a diverse council when you look around the table at who's actually sitting here, but there is no guarantee as to what might happen at the election next year. That's right. So for me, in my best te reo Māori, it's an aye. Kia ora.
Nei rā te mihi ki a tātou. Kua huhui mai nei I tēnei o ngā rangi. Kei konei ahau, he kākano I pua wai mai I ngā rekereke o era kua para te huarahi. Mō mātou o Te Arawa e noho mai ana i tēnei rangi. Ka whakaaro ki tā Pita Tapiana, Peter Tapsell, Auntie Rangi Briggs, Auntie Maureen Waka, and our rangi wiwahi whāngai, Charles Sturt. Nā rātou anō, tēnei huarahi I para mō tātou. I welcome the opportunity to discuss equitable representation of Māori within Te Tiriti o Waitangi. This conversation naturally embraces the fullness of Te Ao Māori, providing opportunity to act in honour of our tikanga and practices of benefit to humanity and the environment. Our unique situation deserves some thought, mind you, and I think already today through the presentation and also through the questioning, we've heard some of the great deliberation that's taken part. This, for me, has not been an easy deliberation. I chose not to get emotional today because it has actually been hell. If you know me well enough, you know that I tend to draw on humour to get me through things. We have the Rotorua Township Agreement. Kia ora, Cousin Kingi. Kia ora rā, Ben. We have historically had Māori representation on the Rotorua Council and currently, as has been mentioned time and time again, 4 Te Arawa elected at-large councillors. We have a partnership with Te Tatau, nei rā te mihi kia koutou, ko tau mai nei I tēnei o ngā rangi. We are the most diverse council in Aotearoa. Let's get that straight. A true reflection of our community. And like every good community, we have some that might niggle us, and I might be one that might niggle my fellow councillors every so often. That is a true reflection of what our community is made up of. If we are true to the fact that we are a true reflection of our community as a council, and if we want our people to engage and participate, we as a community need to do better in ensuring that their votes count in the future. We've already seen statistically the divide between those that are on the Māori roll and those that are on the general roll. With this discussion today, given that I sit on the Māori roll, I will only have the opportunity potentially to vote for 3 people. That's been my dilemma. That has been my dilemma. Heoi anō? Within a dilemma, there's always opportunity, so we always look for the silver lining. Whilst I do not believe that there is a need for a ward system, Article 1, in Rotorua, I do support wholeheartedly greater representation and assurance of diversity. We should have a greater co-design, co-governance and co-jurisdiction within our rohe. Tino rangatiratanga and mana whenua, Article 1 and 2, is what I will make and cast my vote on today. Te Arawa Vision 2050 is what I will make and cast my vote on today. E ori te ana tēnei, nei rā te mihi kia kingi. Nā wano hoki cousin, I timata I tēnei o watatau nei huihuinga, I tērā o watatau nei tupuna kuia. E ori te ana tēnei rā ki tērā o tōku tupuna kuia a te ao kapurangi. Nā no hoki I whakawātia mai te kuaha o te whare whawhao. O tōna iwi, kia ora ai tātou. Nō reira, mā te kite, mā te hanga, ka puawai apopo, I am voting in support of option 3.
Councillor Wang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. E nā iwi, e nā reo, e nā mana, tēnā koutou. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge all of those people in our gallery today and our 4 Māori councillors sitting around our table, and how honoured I am to be serving alongside them in, as Councillor Yates mentioned, what is the most diverse council in the country. Thank you to the people of Rotorua. I've been spending a lot of time thinking over this decision, and it has been tough. There have been tough times. But what has really helped me with the vote that I'll be making today is the many partnerships and co-governance situations that we already have for housing, for environment, for social and community, and many more. Whenever I'm visiting other districts around the country, talking to other councillors, and we're discussing Te Ao Māori, they have all commended Rotorua and talked highly of the partnership that we have here, which is Te Tātou o Te Arawa. Many of them have been fighting for Māori wards before the law change, and they have said that we are trailblazers in the area. Looking around the table, and indeed our district, it might be because this is my home, so I might be biased, but I think that we're unique, we're special. We've been able to do what other councils across the country haven't. Partnerships and representation, as we can see around the table now, but we can do better. When we talk about race, we all know too well the vitriol that can be spread. And as Councillor Kumar mentioned, nothing is guaranteed, but we have a choice today. We can make a decision to guarantee fairer representation around our table. During the long-term plan deliberations, I talked about making mokopuna decisions. And today, I'll be doing so again. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to my fellow councillors. I'd like to start by acknowledging the aspirations that come with the majority of the people in the audience. And I know that you'd be disappointed if I did not articulate some contrary views. It's one of our functions as councillors is to test arguments. So I'd like to start by saying that there are many potential arguments for and against establishing Māori wards in the Rotorua district and for retaining the services of Te Tātou o Te Arawa. I'd like to say up front, I think Te Tātou is performing extremely well, and congratulations to the board and its leadership for the services they've provided. But I wish all my fellow councillors well in analysing the complexities involved. And my evaluation of the two recommendations provided by Te Tātou uses a specific set of values I'd like to clarify. It uses democratic, legal, egalitarian, pragmatic and political values to identify 6 key issues I'd ask you to think about, because they appear to me to be crucial to the democratic and effective decision-making that's required by the Local Government Act. First, democratic values. It's proposed that Māori wards be established with the numbers proportionate to the Māori roll compared to the total enrolled on both rolls. Now that would be fair because it would satisfy the democratic principle of equal suffrage. Equal suffrage is where the votes of eligible voters would have the same value whatever roll a person is on. Conversely, it would be unacceptable for the votes of some people to be more valuable than others because we all have the same human rights. The second set of values are legal values. That's why I raised the question of the actual legal status of the partnership. And the question was ruled out of order. But having Māori wards based on proportionate numbers would be a lawful solution in terms of the Bill of Rights, because it guarantees the same democratic and human rights to all of our citizens, regardless of their ethnicity. So the legal values are vital. The third set of values I draw on are egalitarian values. Our nation has long valued egalitarianism. It resulted in the development of social welfare, education, health systems, and universal suffrage long before most other countries. I need to be able to pursue my arguments in a systematic way, Sir Toby, without interruption, please.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I don't particularly want to sit here and be lectured.
And point of order, please don't include the public in your entreaty. You're convincing your colleagues.
Fine.
Carry on.
I will go on. I'd just like to point out, through our commitment to egalitarian values, we got a lot of things right. And it was right, that right was established through pragmatic problem solving in the past with a vision of egalitarianism. It follows that from that historical experience that we should continue to use these methods and values to drive innovation in local government. To be clear, egalitarianism is a political ideology. It's a doctrine that holds that all people are equal.
Madam Chair, point of order. Could I ask that my fellow councillor remain on topic? This is not an opportunity to lecture councillors.
With respect, Madam Chair, this is an essential building block of my evaluation.
Continue, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. To go back, it's a political ideology and it holds that all people are equal and they deserve equal rights and opportunities. And the question is, why do we use this ideology? It's because people are equal in their fundamental worth and in moral status. Now, our long-standing commitment to egalitarian has been shaken in recent decades by the impact of economic and social and technological changes, most especially by neoliberalism, that disconnected the powerful from the rest of society and strengthened the class structures that favour the privileged. So, I then turn to the fourth set of values used are pragmatic values. In more recent years, we've started to revisit our egalitarian values and decided as a nation that inequities in outcomes are wrong, most especially for Māori, women and other underprivileged classes of people. Problem solving has focused on understanding the complex causes across social, cultural, economic, environmental dimensions of well-being, and then turn to redesigning or better customising our services, institutions, and the governance and management of professionals, not just governance. Now, it's currently popular in some political circles to simplistically claim that introducing race-based representation leading on to co-governance will prove an effective method of transforming local government. That's no more convincing to me than a claim that gender-based or age-based representation in co-governance would prove an effective organisational intervention. And I speak as an ex-professor of organisational reforms in this matter. It's an extremely complex matter.
Councillor McPherson, I have to remind you of time. We have had to turn the clock on because we've all taken our 5 minutes.
Well, people have sometimes spoken a great deal longer than 5 minutes, including yourself, with respect.
Continue, Councillor McPherson.
I wish I could do without these unnecessary. Anyway, the next point is that it would be politically naive to dismiss the significant majority of New Zealanders that loathe race-based representation. Why? Because Kiwis value egalitarianism and the respectful intercultural relationships as both the medium and as the outcome, the required outcome, of innovative problem solving. Now, having clarified the values I've used to contextualise Te Tāto's recommendations, I will now provide a brisk evaluation of their recommendations. The first issue not actually raised by Te Tātou is the actual need for additional representation from Te Arawa. The current council has 4 councillors with whakapapa. It's got a mayor and other councillors who are affiliated with Te Arawa in various ways. They would total roughly 7 out of the 11. Now, they've successfully advanced Te Arawa interests by, for example, investing tens of millions of ratepayers' dollars in iwi partnership projects.
Point of order. I rule that out of order, and I must say that your time is almost up.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm taking exception. This is what we're voting against. I'm taking exception to what I'm hearing coming across from the table. But Te Arawa leadership sitting here, and for them to be subjected to that tirade, no.
You've got 1 minute left.
Madam Chair, can I support your point of order, because Māori Wards is not guaranteeing additional representation for Te Arawa. It's guaranteeing representation for Māori.
I listened to that point of order. I listened very carefully without interrupting anybody else, and I simply anticipated that I would be given the same degree of respect. I would be heard in silence without these constant interruptions. Can I ask the Chair, through you, Chair, are you going to allow me to finish my presentation or
I'm
not?
asking you to withdraw your statement, Councillor McPherson, which is inaccurate and must not be on the record, that Te Arawa has benefited from tens of millions of dollars at this council table and this community. Will you withdraw that statement?
No, I'll do better than that, Your Worship. I'll actually withdraw. Okay, now that there are sound reasons for saying kao to this set of proposals, but given that I will not be heard as others have been heard, I must withdraw and protest. Thank you very much.
Our timing has been equal for everybody. Ka kite. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I actually think we should have shown Councillor McPherson a little bit more respect just there. He's here sharing his views. You know his views have been quite actively against my views, but he's here sharing his views. He won a seat at this table. He should have been listened to. So it's a shame he's had to leave for this. This will be a monumental decision for us. Kei te mihio ki toku whānau no Te Arawa, ko taima i tēnei rā. Ki te whakarongo ki o mātou kōrero, ki te kaunihira. E ki ana hau ki a koe, anei e whā ngā kai kaunihira ki tēnei tepu. E whā. We have 4 councillors from Te Arawa sitting at this table. And actually, that's nothing new. That is nothing new. Rotorua has had a long history of electing Māori to council. The purpose of introducing Māori wards was to ensure fair representation, but that doesn't relate to Rotorua because we are unique, and I'm very grateful for that. Our rangatahi and mokopuna know that being Māori is not a barrier to get onto this council. In the past 12 years, the highest polling councillor in Rotorua has been Māori. While other councillors absolutely need Māori wards to ensure that iwi are at the table, we're already at the table, and with a much better model than Māori wards. We led the way for the country when we established Te Tātou o Te Arawa to represent the mana whenua of Rotorua. And importantly, they have voting rights at the council committee. Currently, we are progressive and demonstrate in many ways the Te Tiriti o Waitangi partnership in action. Here, it's almost 50-50 at the table. Rotorua Council has gifted back land, reserves, springs. We've introduced Māori tikanga, te reo class, and held compulsory noho marae for all of our staff so that they may learn about Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the Rotorua Township Fenton Agreement that was established for our township and signed by Ngāti Whakaue, Ngāti Uenuku Kōpako and Ngāti Rangawewehi. I agree that we can always do better. There's always room for improvement. But I am concerned that Māori wards is a backward step for Te Arawa and could diminish our influence in local government. As we've heard, Māori wards are only for electoral purposes, and once elected, Māori wards councillors swear the same oath as general councillors, and I want to be clear that they're not there necessarily to represent Māori issues because they're expected to represent issues at large for the entire district. So the deciding factor for me today, and I've put a lot of thought into it, is the answer to the most important question, which what is the best for the people? And when I'm also hearing the people who, like us in the short time frame, have been forced to make a decision very quickly, a lot of them have been concerned at the fact when they realise that a vote for yes today means that they are no longer able to vote for up to 10, the best of the best, but they will be restricted to 3 or maybe even 2. Now, is that going to be what's best for our people? I appreciate that the view of Māori wards will guarantee a Māori voice at the table, but to that, as I say, as time goes by, people come and go and councils change. But one thing that remains the same is values. And Rotorua, time and time again, has demonstrated their values of supporting Māori to be at this table. This has been a hard decision to make, but I know that there are other Māori out there who don't want to be restricted to only voting for Māori wards. So as we go through with the representation review, if we can guarantee that those Māori will also be able to vote for other councillors, as they have been able to do, then I'll be happy to support it in future. But I know, and I know some of you in this room won't be happy, but I need to have courageous leadership and stick up for all voices in our community. And the reality is, this isn't being unanimous for our community, and it won't be unanimous for our council, because today I'll be voting against Māori wards.
Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me. I wanted to be the last speaker, and I'm sorry that Councillor McPherson has decided to leave and not take part and be part of the decision again. But first of all, I want to firstly express how proud I am to be part of Rotorua Lakes Council. And I have been part of it for a long time. We are the most diverse council in New Zealand. Sorry if I'm repeating some of the things that have been said before, but I'm proud of that. And with the Mayor, Stevie Chadwick, providing the strong leadership that we require. And she's done it from the time she came onto this council. I've been on before where some people did not have the courage to include Māori. And I look around at my colleagues and proudly I look at you and I go, yes, councillors, 10 of us, 4 are Māori. Did I have 5? Yeah, I'm going, aiming for 5. 4 Māori, 3 Pākehā, 2 Chinese, Zhao Shanghao, and 1 Indian. Namaste. Namaste. We are a multicultural community, and let's be proud of that too. We also have a strong council there where we have a Lakes Community Board and a Rural Board, and they are ably led by the chair people of their groups. I want to touch on the fact that, and some had touched on it earlier, our beautiful young girl here, she's topped the poll the last 2 times. Merepeka topped it before that. And I've topped the poll, I've forgotten when, because I've only been on council 15 terms. The youngest councillor in the whole of New Zealand, I think, only a month or 2 apart, Councillor Wang. Rotorua is unique. We are leaders, not followers. Allow me to touch on a bit of history, because I think this is helpful for the debate that we're having. On May 26th, 2015, we had more in this room here, over 250 came in to this chamber, and 150 were outside in the council rooms watching on a live stream, proud to support. We were setting up our te tata. And but that was after 18 months of meaningful consultation. I feel a lot of aroha for our te tata board at the moment. They only had 2 months to get this in place. We only had 2 hui, one at Te Ao Marama on a Friday night and the next one on a Saturday morning. I went along to it, expressed my views then too. We had 26 hui around the whole motu over those 18 months. Whilst I look at it and I'm disappointed that it's not a strong mandate from Te Arawa, because of the time frame, I guess that's one, that it is not a strong mandate. but it's still a mandate. Then we had 1,100 submissions, and we had this taniwha here strong with the opposition against what we wanted in this chamber. 6 days of, or the first 2 days was brutal, but then the tide turned and it started to swing our way. And I want to acknowledge, and there was Kingi Biddle, Arapeta Tahana, and many others. They worked hard to achieve what we achieved then, and I mihi to them. And all the options were considered, even Māori wards at the time round at the hui. But you know what? After those 6 days, one of our proudest moments, well, for me anyway, and others, in this chamber, we won 8-5. But we also, I want to thank the support we got from the late Charles Sturt, Karen Hunt. It cost her her position on council. And I think of, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Dave, and strong leadership from our manukura. The support we got it 8-5. So it was, again, Dr. Reynolds lost, like he's lost many mayoralty bids. Nor reira. But what I do want to say about the Māori wards, I'm not against Māori wards, but I want to add some, maybe an analogy. Hope I pronounced that right. Yeah. One is I look.
Nearly up.
Eh?
Your time is nearly up.
Nearly up. Oh, a bit of rush. Okay. Aroha mai. I think of the Māori All Blacks, and I think of the All Blacks, and I look at a Māori All Black here, our kaumātua Alec, who should have been an All Black.
Come on.
And then the netball, Silver Ferns. Actually, you ask any one of them what would they love to be. They love to play for the Māori teams, but they want to be an All Black. Hence, but I prefer, and I have over the years wanted to be chosen on merit, and I've believed on stand up and be counted and at large. But and when I touched on only 5 years ago, and the Mayor touched on that happened, did I and many waste our time then? Only 5 years ago, we'll have to wait and see. And just closing up, Mayor, I touched on the, asked Gina the question about the co-governance. Can I say Ngāti Rangi Wewahi are in co-governance now with our Lakes Council, with our river, Taniwha Springs, and soon we are going with a joint going to Baipaliti Regional Council for a joint consent. So just in closing, reluctantly I support the recommendation because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well, I'll closing remarks as the mover of the motion, that I hope that everybody understands how difficult the decision is. For some, it's very simple. For others, it's very complex. Our decision as councillors today is about what's best for our people and our community and our place. And it must match the aspirations of Vision 2030 and the Te Arawa vision. How do we best give effect to that? No one can actually second guess the outcome of the representation review. And I could rebut some of the points I've heard, because actually you don't have to limit yourself to 3 Māori on council, but let's wait for the outcome of what the community shapes as how they see the outcome of a representation review. I think every councillor here, and I'm sorry that one member left, but we all uphold those values. We all understand them, and we are all conversant with the values of the Human Rights Act and democracy. So, a big decision for us. Thank you for the support from the gallery today, And then this decision, however it is made, will be the beginning of the next stage for Rotorua, our people. So on that note, we take it as one. I'm going to ask, because it's such a significant issue, for a show of hands. All those in support of 2, 3, 4 and 5, please raise your hands. Do you wish your vote against to be noted?
Madam Chair, I was going to vote for option 2, which is not on there. So I do vote for Māori wards. I just don't, as per the legislation, which is what we are required to do today. The other scope of what has come out today is not something that I was prepared for, and I just wanted to go by what the legislation was. Super.
Vote, Councillor Kumar, and that's why we were so careful to be informed about the scope of the resolutions. So thank you, everybody, and you can see that this wasn't an easy debate, but it will take our place forward. And Kingi, I wonder if you close our hui today. Well, I declare the meeting closed.
Kia ora tātou, koe nei te mihi, te kaunihina kia koutou katoa. Te Arawa waka, te Arawa tangata, nei, he tapu ai tonu tēnei. Ara i te mea ko te mutunga o te haerenga, he tapu ai. Hei, kia rere pai ai ngā mahi, ki te wāhi hihi e tēnei i ngā mātuenga tūpuna. Tā te tangata e whakapono. Koia tā tātou i rongo ai. Ahapua tā tātou whakahea, ahapua tā tātou whakaai ki tāna. Tā te tangata e whakapono. E mihi, tātika, kia ea te wahanga ki a tātou, kia ea te wahanga ki tēnei o ngā kau. Kia noho tau i roto i te āuatanga, kia kawaka e kitea i roto i a pukamata i a Instagram me noho tonu ki konei. Kia pai ai te wairua, pai ai te hohonutanga o te whaka. Wa ea, kua tau. Te whakairia ke te tapu. Kia whakataha ai, kia turuki. Whakataha ai, hau i e. Tēnā kata.